Welcome back to Switzer. A growing national problem is how young men are dealing with mental health challenges. The Blokes Foundation was established to help those struggling Australians, and one of the group's youth workers, Bailey Risorto, joins us to tell us why so many young men are in a difficult situation nowadays. Thanks for coming on the show, Bailey.
Thanks for having me.
So how did you... Well, no, first of all, tell us about the history of Blokes Foundation.
So the Blokes Foundation was founded 10 years ago and was created to raise awareness for young men's health and how we need to pay attention to young men's health as we were doing and are doing for young women. Yeah. It was, we wanted to change the social perceptions of young men. Yeah. A lot of the media coverage of young men still today is very negative. Yeah. It's always a negative story rather than a positive one, and so we wanted to help shift that. Yeah. Today we have much more of a focus on social education programs, so we run a couple of those, and yeah, that's to help build, resilience and, target mental health. And
why the name? Top Blokes is a great name, but why the name?
Because we want to focus on the positive and, encourage, make it relatable to young men and to kind of encourage them to aspire to be a top bloke. It's actually really good in session. I facilitate a lot of programs, and actually in session it's quite easy for us to be like, no, that's not like a top bloke's thing to do, and just kind of throw it in there all the time so they hear it frequently and then they think, okay, how do I be that top bloke then?
How significant is the broken family and young men suffering as a consequence of it?
Look, I think that's always going to have an impact. It's obviously, that's our rock, that's our core element. It's where we start and where we move forward. In saying that, I think that places like the Blokes Foundation or other social education programs, schools, have a great impact on helping young men to build these skills and to have a safe place to talk about whatever they might need to talk about, or to point them in the right direction of the resources that they need to get to. I think, yeah, there's definitely an impact on that broken situation, but I don't think that it is the sole cause.
No, but like I've noticed, for example, with a football coach like Wayne Bennett, he seems to be able to help a lot of young men who may well have had poor father figures, poor leadership role models in their life, and he often fits the bill. And I think the good coaches in all sports can have that kind of fatherly figure mentoring role. Is that what a lot of young men need? Good role models as opposed to crummy role models?
Definitely. I think that, and I think, if nothing else, I would love for people to realise that every single person is a role model or a potential role model, and it is those everyday people that really have an impact on young men. It's you buying a coffee tomorrow. If there's a young guy there and you interact with that barista in a certain way, that's going to be you role modelling, and that's enough for them to see that and identify that and think, okay, I want to do that, or I don't want to do that, or that's what he did, and so I'll do that, particularly if they don't have that role model directly in their living situation.
Do you think that the media, and I work in the media, do you think the media plays a role in not helping young men, that the stereotypes that they put forward sometimes aren't positive in giving young men different sorts of choices?
I think that...
Don't worry about picking on the media, I'll probably support you.
I think that there are some negative trends that are reported on quite heavily and quite frequently, and they do need to be reported on because we need to address these issues and we need to tackle them and talk about them, but we also need some positive ones, and I just think that sometimes the media does fall down on that, but I think that that's a general kind of thing that the media does because it's not as sensationalised or it's not as exciting to talk about all the good things.
Okay. What if I'm a father or a mother at home, I'm hearing this, and I know my son's kind of being challenged by society and all the pressures around him at the moment, and I don't know what to do, because a lot of parents become parents, but they're not necessarily natural leaders. Should they think about contacting an organisation like yours? And if so, what will happen?
Definitely. If we can help them directly, then we will. And if we can't, then we're going to point them in the right direction of someone that can. And that's a great first step. I think that as well, if parents can take on a little bit of responsibility and role model that behaviour that they want their sons to follow, in the sense that they do get educated and they take a realistic approach to some of the issues. Like if their son is struggling with violence, then let's get some education around that and why that might be happening. Or if it's drugs and alcohol, let's get some education around that and talk about it in a realistic setting for what the trends are now for them, rather than just saying, don't do it because I'm your parent and I don't want you to do it. It doesn't work.
Have parents in many ways set a bad example in terms of alcohol?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's parents, because you can't say that it's all parents. But I think that the Australian culture has some pretty big issues with alcohol, and I think that is something that we need to tackle head on. And I think that social education programs and like factual base on this is what the alcohol's doing, which is what the schools are doing and, you know, education is doing, but also this is what your social situation looks like and this is what happens. You're going to go to a party and drugs and alcohol are going to come up, and so how do you navigate that? What does that situation feel like and what can you do to make that better? These are the sorts of conversations that need to be had in order to change that culture, you know, and to give young people the tools to be able to make that decision instead of just following that trend or that culture.
Okay, have you been able to take some historical perspective on this and say, well, are the young men of today any more worse than the young men of, say, 20 years ago? It's just that we actually care more about it, or there's more drugs in their life than before. Is this something that the historical significance that drugs are far more intrusive into a young man's life than it was 20 years ago? I
think when it comes to drugs specifically, there is a higher frequency in accessibility, and you know, designer drugs are just through the roof. Whereas I think that has definitely increased. That trend is definitely visible, and so also, you know, things like alcohol going up in price lean towards young men than, you know, drugs are a cheaper option for them a lot of the time, so they do consider it simply because it's easier for them to get and it's cheaper. And that's the unfortunate thing. It is a lot easier to get, and perhaps it was always easy to get, but like I said, that increase in that...
No, thank God it wasn't.
Really?
Anyway, the important point is this. If someone needs to contact you, how do they do it?
The easiest way would probably be to go to the website.
Website?
Yep, which is www.topblokes.org.au. Yeah, that'll give you all the information that you need, and then you can...
Is the government supporting you guys? Are you getting any government funding?
No, we're not as of yet. We are fully relying on the community support. But you know, that's the beauty of grassroots. You can...
Any corporations supporting you at this point in time?
We have had different ones at different times, yes.
Well, you need a decent one to put some money there. Maybe there might be a few out there that could improve their community image. I hope they...
It's always a good option, yeah I think so.
Thanks for coming on the show, Bailey.
Thank you.
That's Bailey Risorto from the Blokes Foundation. Thanks for joining me on the show tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night.